As promised, I want to do a quick part 2 to my video yesterday all about my MBA journey. And this is going to cover MBA costs, including the upfront costs you can expect and how I paid for my MBA. So if this is interesting to you, stay tuned. I also want to acknowledge that this is a very expensive process, especially if you're doing a 2-year full-time program, and not everybody is in a position to take on that kind of risk. I was very lucky in my life to be able to be in a position to take on this kind of risk. That being said, there are so many avenues to help make this program more affordable. I think if this is your dream, there are a lot of ways to make it happen. All right, first things first, I want to talk about the upfront costs. So I would say if you can earmark about anywhere from $1,000 to $7,000, that's probably realistic. So starting with the exams you're going to need to take. The GMAT or the GRE are the two standard exams for MBA programs. And so I would budget at least 2 rounds of exams. You want to give yourself the best shot at the best score. And, this is something that I took on when I was in a really intense consulting role. I didn't really think too hard about it. I'm a smart gal, so I was like, I can just kind of wing the GMAT. And I wish I had taken it a little bit more seriously, maybe done a class. No matter how quick you are on your feet and how smart you are, you really need to study in a way that will prepare you for these unique tests. The better you do on these tests, the more scholarship money you can potentially earn. As while this seems high, the payoff can be enormous if you really knock it out of the park. Next, study books. So sometimes find these on Facebook Marketplace. So that could be free, or you can find them on eBay. I just think that's something you can save on. And then classes and tutoring can be a huge variation in cost, add incremental value to you where you might not get that same value from the free online courses. So it's something to think about and do what you can do. But this is maybe an area to invest that I didn't invest in, wish I had. Thank you gifts for recommenders, I think, are really important. You're asking a lot of the folks that you ask to write recommendation letters, and typically that's somebody you've worked for in the past and then somebody who knows you in a different capacity from maybe volunteer work or something else you've done in the community. And so you really want to acknowledge the gift of that time that they're investing in you. These applications are not just a simple form. They have short answer. They need to go into depth about who you are as a person and what kind of colleague you are. I think for mine, I gave nice restaurant gift cards. One of my recommenders had a young child getting into hockey for the first time, and that was something that we connected on. And so I got hockey skates for his child. So getting something personal and thoughtful doesn't have to be insanely expensive, but it does have to be a real acknowledgement of the time that they're putting into you. And then, of course, application fees. Those can be kind of spendy, couple $100 per application typically. This is why I would say be super intentional about the schools that you apply to because of fees and your recommender capacity, but also just for your own sake in terms of really targeting the schools that you think will be a good fit for you. You'll have a higher return rate. And also, if you're just throwing darts at a wall based on a ranking list, then the schools can kind of tell that, and they're not going to feel that you put a lot of personal thought into why a particular school is helping you accomplish the mission you set out to accomplish with your MBA. And then finally, school visits. Some schools will do this after you're admitted. They will have, a new student admit weekend, try to convince you that their school's the best match for you. Or you might want to do some of that proactively on your own and just feel it out. And so I would budget a little bit for some school visits. All right, so let's now get into the meat of it. This is a ballpark estimate. Again, off the top of my head, this is about what I think I paid for each category of my MBA. So overall, the 2-year full-time program cost me all in about $230,000. 170 of that is roughly what tuition costs. It's typically about $80,000 to $85,000 per year for the 2-year program. And then you're going to have living expenses. And I categorize this as living and experiences because there are a few factors in here. So there's room and board, of course, if you have an apartment or you live on campus. You have food, you have clothes, you need suits for interviews, etc. And you need study books, which can be quite expensive, a couple $100 at least per term. And again, I would see if you can save on these through resale sites. Often you can find $200 or $300 textbooks on eBay or Amazon for, $30 or something if they're not brand new. Travel and treks are the big expense here. And I think everyone I've talked to, my own experience included, would say that treks, which are international trips typically that you'll go on as part of business school that have an educational component, and you'll often listen to company briefings while you're there, are one of the most important and valuable experiences that you have during your MBA. And so, for example, I did a trek to Japan, which was unbelievable. It was 10 days and I learned so much. And then I also did a 10-day NOLS trek in Patagonia, which was really unbelievable. And I'll have to do a story time about that later. Essentially, that's why this category can be so expensive. And of course, you can cut down on these things, but I would say the ROI of an MBA is very much embedded in the relationships that you build and the, professionalism you exhibit. So things like having a nice suit and going on these treks to bond with your classmates and learn about, the world can have a much bigger payoff than what you're spending in the short term. And these treks, I'll say, are anywhere from, $3,000 to $5,000 typically. Sometimes the school too will have a fund for, if you are wanting to go on a trek, but money is tight or you're in a unique financial situation, there's often a pool of money that you can draw on if you just make that clear. Let's break down how I actually paid for this. So I had about $20K in cash saved up that I contributed just from working and saving my money. Then I had $50,000 granted in scholarship from the Forte Foundation, which is for women in business pursuing this kind of degree. I would definitely recommend going to MBA fairs in your local city because a lot of these programs will attend those fairs and give you more information about how you can apply or how you can be considered at your respective school. In my case, it was merit-based, and Cornell, my program, made the decision about where to allocate those funds from that program. But there are lots of different kinds of programs, so if you think that you might not be eligible, you might be surprised. I took about $160K in loans, which sounds like a scary amount, and believe me, at the time, it was. I stuck with federal loans, even though, you'll get courted by companies that will do refinancing and give you, a lower interest rate. Can be really appealing. In my case, it made sense to stay on the federal loan program versus refinancing because when I graduated, that was the year that COVID hit. So it was 2020. And when there are emergency situations like that, oftentimes the federal student loan program has a little bit more flexibility to put your loans in forbearance, AKA, stall when you'll need to start paying them off. Those protections can be really helpful, and they aren't typically accessible to you if you're doing private refinancing. So here's what I did to pay off my loans. I set up monthly auto pay. Try to be as aggressive as possible in your monthly pay down. Your interest will accrue during school and it will add to your principal. My main payoff strategy, frankly, was just applying all my bonuses aggressively to this as a lump sum. And so the job I was in post MBA, and I did think very intentionally about the kind of job I got and the kind of return it would have in the short term. The kind of job I had was business development, strategic partnerships. And so a large portion of my comp was in commission. So I'd get, a slightly more modest base salary, but a large commission check once a year and then smaller commission checks each quarter. So instead of buying lovely things that were very tempting, I just go right into my Nelnet student loan account. And so I probably spent 3 years doing that very seriously and paid that off, which was a huge deal. And I'm so proud of that. I'm on such a better career trajectory, both financially, but also from a fulfillment standpoint than I was before my MBA. And so I'm incredibly glad I made that investment. Investing this much in myself really gave me a ton of confidence. And not only did it help me make that leap and seek out higher things, it also made me feel like I appreciated all the hard work I'd done my whole life and that I was now in a position to invest in the number one thing I can control in life, which is my own hard work and my passion in my career path. So I hope this was helpful. I know this can seem really overwhelming. I would do the math, kind of map it out, see what you can pull from in your various buckets here. Maybe you can save a little more wisely than I did up front. Or maybe you have family that can help or things like that. So there are a lot of different options here. I'm happy to help answer any other questions you might be mulling over. Good luck, and I'm so excited for you to be on this journey.